Hello, in this video, I'm going to explain the most common type of journaling that I recommend to my patients. Stay tuned. Hello, and welcome to Wellness with John, resources to help you thrive. I'm John Peters. And let me say first that given that there's something like 700 trillion hours of content uploaded to YouTube every day, I appreciate you taking a minute to join me on my channel to learn some resources to help you thrive. So, thank you very much for joining me for a few minutes today. So, in this video, my goal is to explain the most common type of journaling that I end up recommending to my students and my patients, which has some really valuable benefits to enhance the mode of acceptance. So I've talked about acceptance in other videos. If you want to check out the video on acceptance that I did as a multi-part series on acceptance and commitment therapy, I'll put a link up here if you want to check that out. But basically, acceptance is being in an open, aware state of the self and your ongoing experience in a way that reveals, in the therapeutic context, reveals information that is going to be useful for whatever process you're in and whatever therapeutic goals you're pursuing, right? So basically, if we are not sufficiently aware of parts of the self, then we don't have stuff to consciously work with. And so acceptance is the ability to be in that mode, even dealing with challenging parts of our experience and challenging parts of the self. So we therapists often do recommend journaling in lots of different forms, because if you explore journaling for growth, for self-help, for spiritual practice, for therapeutic processes, you'll find that there are lots of different forms of journaling. I don't want you to just isolate your idea about journaling as the classic Dear Diary, like, okay, today I did this and then that, and here's what I think about it. That's one mode, and it's fine. I'm not poo-pooing it, but there are lots of different modes of journaling that can be very supportive of therapeutic processes. So the one that I tend to recommend most often is free writing, which you may have encountered if you took a composition class in high school or college, because sometimes or creative writing class, sometimes instructors in writing classes will have people do free writing in order to be creative in developing ideas or developing structure for stuff that they're writing. Okay. But in this context here, I'm talking about the use of free writing not to the end of producing an essay of some sort, but to, as I said earlier, work on enhancing the mode of acceptance in the therapeutic process. So let me take a minute to explain what free writing is, and I'll say more about why I recommend it. So free writing is basically where you set a time period, let's say 5 minutes, and during the 5 minutes, you are going to write nonstop. And that means that whatever is in the front of your mind, you're going to write down, and you're going to keep writing even if it's not well formed. So if you think about the Dear Diary entry, there's a form to it. And so if I said, I want you to write a diary entry, you could produce that, but there would be points where you would pause because what your brain is doing is wanting to structure the output, what the words that you're putting on the page, to conform to the Dear Diary structure and mode of writing, which is okay. Again, I'm not poo-pooing that, but in free writing, what you're going to get at is the stuff that normally your brain would be editing out during the times when you're pausing while writing a conventional diary entry. And therefore, you're going to allow an expression of things that aren't well formed, maybe a phrase, maybe a sentence, maybe something that was incoherent based on what you just wrote half a second before, right? In the conventional Dear Diary mode, we want the whole thing to make some sort of sense. We want it to be coherent. We want the parts to relate meaningfully to each other so that the narrative makes some sort of sense. But in free writing, we are dropping that editing function and we're saying, look, I'm just going to keep writing no matter what, even if it's gibberish, even if it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter. Whatever is in the front of my mind, I am going to write down, even in a very present way. Like if you're doing a free writing, you might get to a point where you say, I don't have anything that I can think of to write. That's what's in the front of your mind. Well, you write that down too. You're literally going to write anything that is in that dynamic, evolving inner dialogue that goes on in the front of your mind. And you don't even have to have a prompt. Like, so you don't, with the free writing exercise, you don't necessarily say, I'm going to write about my troubles that I'm having with my dissatisfaction with my job. You could, it's fine to have to start with a focus on a prompt, but even with an intended focus of an initial prompt, you want to hold on loosely to that because what you want to allow is whatever comes to mind, you're going to write that down. Again, doesn't have to be complete sentences, doesn't have to be coherent with whatever came before it, doesn't have to be with the purpose of the whole thing making sense. The only rule is I'm going to start writing and keep writing for the time period I agree with myself when I begin. So I often encourage people to start off experimenting with doing it for a 5-minute period, but you could do it for a 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute period. You could do it for 10 minutes if you have the perseverance. That might be a little bit challenging. Excuse me. But in any case, you get the point. The point is to give yourself a time period, agree to write for that entire time period. You can start with a prompt or focus, that's fine, but you're not necessarily going to stay committed to writing around that because that would defeat the purpose of being free in the writing, right? And you're going to avoid the editing function, judgments, things that would cause you to not want to write something. Because the reality is, if you try this free writing experience, and you will also notice this if you've tried meditation, the reality is that there's a constant dialogue in our head. If we pay attention, we basically never shut up in our head. Now, sometimes we're saying stuff that's not necessarily things we're saying to ourselves, because if you, let's say, have a song stuck in your head, then you're kind of doing the song as the inner dialogue. But the reality is our brains are sensation-seeking organs, and our brains want there to be content. Our brains don't just relax into some sort of empty, open state unless you're anesthetized or drowsy and about to fall asleep, maybe. But while you're awake, your brain is just constantly making up an inner dialogue. Okay, so we're going to exploit that fact by just turning the attention to the inner dialogue and just writing everything that goes on during a 5-minute period. So I encourage you to try this because what it often does is it often brings out into light aspects of what we're experiencing that, again, we're normally not as aware of and not working with assertively in a mode of acceptance. Now, you may write things that are not surprising. It's not that when we do free writing, everything you write there is surprising and new and comes from the deepest part of our unconscious or subconscious. But I do find that when I've done this with myself and when I've had my patients do this, that it consistently is a vehicle for revealing stuff that is related to what's going on with us, but that may not be in focus in a way that it's working in a constructive, synthetic way toward our therapeutic goals or our personal growth goals. Okay, so basically, stuff gets revealed that perhaps could be supportive of what you're up to and the types of changes that you want to make and the transformations you want to experience. So try free writing and see what you think about it if you try it. and you have comments about the experience, come back to this video and please leave comments below. If you like this kind of content, please like the video. And if you have yet to subscribe to my channel, please subscribe. I need more subscribers to help grow this channel. And one last thing before I hang up today is if you want a free ebook to teach you some easy to learn stress management techniques that can help you lower your stress starting today and also help you rework how you deal with stress so that into the future you're more effective at coping with stress, I'll put a link in the description below so that you can click over to my site and get a copy of that free ebook. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you in an upcoming video.